Good stuff. Good stuff.
Go for it.
Okay, everyone. Thank you for joining in this beautiful weather we're having. I'm actually covered in snow, so hope you guys are all nice and sunshiny. Today's topic, of course, is going to be the team collaboration. Where one of the biggest topics that we have uh, in many scenarios, of course, in the engineering realm, is how do we collaborate between different departments. All right, so um, my name is Sergio Brinkhouse. I don't know if I'm new to you all out there. It's some of those who don't know me. Been with the company for a while now. I'm joined today by my lovely assistant Andrew Fortenberry. He's going to be on the chat. If you guys have any questions, anything in relation to the discussion that we're having today, feel free to punch it into the chat, and we'll get into those questions a little bit after the presentation. So the topic of today, of course, reporting with EPLAN inside the EPLAN platform. One of the biggest and mandatory environments is obviously the team collaboration between different departments. How do we communicate the data that's being transmitted from one department to another in a seamless way, also in a way that we can, enhance productivity. Some of the things that we're going to highlight today, of course, is going to be the different reports using the philosophy of the EPLAN platform, and how this could actually be really, bring your team or bring your company to a different level. One of the biggest things that we need to discuss also, that we'll touch upon as well, is the high level of quality documentation that we can actually produce alongside with the time savings, the accuracy and the information that we can spit out, as well as keeping the project information updated. The environments also that are going to be very important in the different aspects of the collaboration are going to be test environments, of course, and how by having a proper documentation for a test environment, this could actually be very positive effect for the overall team. Complete detailed reports that are very easy to understand. This is something that's a very crucial topic, something that is more visual, more accessible, more simplified in a way that, hey, anyone could understand it. You don't need a high level degree to be able to decrypt some of the reports that are out there. The benefit of having all departments have ease of use documentation that they can collaborate with, in the sense that we don't want to spend too much time trying to make sure that this information is accurate per se, as well as graphical reports to save time, and especially for the production levels, but as well as for the maintenance levels, because one of the biggest issues that we have, of course, is that yes, the documentation is being prepared in a way that we can use it when we're preparing the machine and getting it going, but maintenance is huge in our environment where the machine needs to be controlled, verified, and checked prior, or afterwards, and so on and so forth. So one of the things that I really wanted to touch upon to have this all make sense is what is documentation. So the process of preparation in order to maintain the information that has to be written, printed, or in an electronic form is mandatory, right? Multiple documentation levels are required. Policies to manuals, procedures, and records. These are some of the things that we have a tendency of maybe not necessarily considering when we're doing our design and producing our machines. Some of these, some of these forms and some of these documents that we're producing are going to be evidence for future reference. Some of these, the best quality type documentation that you can have can also ensure end user safety. So these reports that we're talking about are not to take, I guess in my point of view would be not to be taken lightly. Good quality assurance of efficient documentation also is great for any company, right? The more documentation, the more information you can spit out to your end user or to your customer per se, the more information he'll enjoy, right? And obviously in a format that's at least a little bit more presentable in a sense. Also, it acts as evidence and is also, like, we stated, mandated by law. One of the things that we need to remember, of course, is that if it's not documented, chances is it doesn't exist, right? Another aspect that's very important for us, of course, is simplification, right? So that's the key. So when is creating a report, a really tedious or hard task? When do people cringe when we request to have, hey, I need this type of report? Can you do it? So people, who have maybe they have to create a script to get this information out because we're reading a multitude of separate files, and we have to have some level of high programming skills or know someone who can actually produce something that'll be able to read into these files, extract the information, and generate some sort of documentation that could be time consuming and also costly to do that. Manual data entry to get some level of reporting done. So when we have to manually, produce bill of materials or manually produce from two lists and whatnot. Manual lists also for collaborative data exchange when, somebody in the shop floor has to cross-reference this information and look at the schematics, and look at the documentation, and it has to do it in a manual way to confirm that this information is true and valid. This could also be, where it gets a little bit hard to do that. Manual trace, visual confirmations from the schematics. Again, I'm looking at the schematic, then I have to visually look at the document, and there's a lot of time consumption there as well. Creating SQL queries, very complex dialogues. When you have an application that just is asking you 20,000 questions and creating an SQL query on the background. In order to be able to produce some sort of documentation can be time consuming and also require a certain high level of expertise. When the application does not have a variety of reports, so when we're using an application that only gives us X amount of possible documents that it can generate, that can also be time consuming because you're going to have to find another application to generate some level of report that might be needed or might be requested by your end user. Cross verification could be too complicated, time consuming. And of course, when can this become an easy task is, of course, when you're using efficient applications that automatically produce this data by means of using integrated tools, database-driven functionality, which is key in this kind of environment when you need to produce documentation. So let's see it in action. Let me just close this up. Bring this down here, this out. So we have a schematic project. We're using, of course, the EPLAN Electric P8 application. We do have here, I'm using the Pro Panel tool. I'm working on this particular project. And of course, inside this schematic environment, I have some devices that I laid down, connections that have been placed. For those of you who are new to the EPLAN environment, if there are any on the presentation today, welcome to EPLAN, first of all, and hopefully this kind of will make sense to you. The idea, of course, is by inserting these objects that we're putting inside our schematics, we're not drafting per se, we're dropping information in, which is being cataloged and logged into a database, which is easily accessible after the fact when you need to access this information and generate reports and so on and so forth. Now, of course, there's a lot of data involved. There's part information, there's connection from to data, there's cable data. There's a whole slew of different aspects that we're actually producing when we're doing these different type of schematic work. Well, when we go into the report generation functionality, we do have the capability of creating a multitude of different report types. I'm not going to get into the details of it. But one of the aspects that's very crucial to understand is that the level of functionality when you're creating a document or when you need to generate a report, what's the ease of use? So do I have to, create scripts? Do I need programming experience and so on and so forth? And the answer is really no. It's very simple and straightforward. So depending on the type of report or document that you'd like to create, you just create it in the environment. And then you can also benefit by associating a multitude of different tasks and functions that allow you to enhance the experience and also enhance the level of documentation. So think about it in a sense where you have a bill of materials. So obviously, if we're using a particular tool per se, and we need to generate a bill of material, it comes in the form of an Excel spreadsheet or a text document or maybe even an XML. Well, what would happen if you wanted to tweak that bill of material? You want to make it more, maybe you want to incorporate some level of filter functionality where the report that you want to generate, yes, you want a bill of material for the overall devices that are your project. But what if you want to streamline that because you have a different department that maybe handles all the fuses out there? They're the ones that are dealing with a particular supplier, and they want to be able to use this report just for a fuse or protection device so that they can give it to this one supplier that they're dealing with that gives them a super, super good discount. So we can use, in the EPLAN environment, of course, we can use filter settings where we can start to really trim down the data that's in there. So in a sense, think about it as a huge bucket of information where the system internally, depending on what you request, it'll go in there, pick what it needs, and it will spit it out in the form of a report. Add on to this the capability of being able to do calculation functionality. So I've created a bill of material, and in my bill of material I have component information, of course, part data, manufacturing information, and so on and so forth. One of the benefits and one of the really interesting aspects about EPLAN, of course, is that data is key, of course, in this case, but also good data is very important. So data is one aspect. A good data or complete data, it's a completely different, ball of wax there. So one of the benefits, of course, in EPLAN is that we have the capability of having multitude of different attributes, of which could be max power consumption. What is the level of consumption that a component, takes when we're actually producing a panel in the example of a panel, if you will. So this information is stored inside the EPLAN environment. As soon as I associated a part to a component, all that data is there: width, height, depth, manufacturer information, description, costs, certifications, you name it. There's a whole bunch of information that's tied into that one component. And of course, that component contains that information, which is max power dissipation. Using the calculation functionality, I could create a BOM that can add all that information up. I can also specify in my project that there's a certain power supply that I'm going to be using, and that could create calculation functionality that would benefit in the aspects of a report where the system will automatically generate that for you and calculate it for you because, of course, this is something that you're going to be doing anyway. So in the aspects of cost effectiveness and time consumption, this could be interesting to have a tool that can actually not only generate a document, but also can tweak it, and on top of it, can also do some additional calculations to it. So the benefit here, of course, is to be able to generate documentation in a format that is not only very presentable, readable, comprehensible, but also can give you a lot more to it. So that being said, let me just go ahead and generate all these reports. So the system will create all these different reports that I've created myself. I actually associated some specifications with inside here, this environment. I am stating what form to use. Here's another benefit of EPLAN, of course, is the capability of being able to have access to a multitude of different form types. So not only can you give your project the enhanced information for your end user, but you could give it a look and feel that is a little bit more, readable and accessible. And all these forms that you would use in an EPLAN environment are very easy to produce. So I've done that association. I've selected here my project, and I will generate all these different report types. So I'll go ahead, generate that. And again, as you'll notice, I'm not necessarily using a script. I'm not waiting 20 minutes or, taking a 30-minute lunch break just to make sure that my system has enough time to generate those documents. It's pretty much instantaneous. That's the beauty of having a database-driven system. So those reports will be now found at the bottom of my project here because that's where I told it to create those reports. I created little hierarchies, and I'll start to take a look at maybe some of the wire lists that it produced. So this document created a wire list. To this wire list, I have a lot of information, right? I got the source, the target, the color type. I might even have some length information depending if I'm using specific modules inside the EPLAN environment that could do that routing information that can be produced. Another benefit, of course, that I've added to this report, I found this interesting to have, is the fact that the wires follow certain paths. So for troubleshooting purposes, I could see here this wire is going through my wire duct 152. It's going into the 138, going through the 134, and turning here somewhere in this wire duct 132. Now, of course, the benefit for troubleshooting purposes and for maintenance is that, yes, the multimeters or the wire verification tools are essential and will never go away, but at least I have an idea of where that is supposed to be found, right? So already giving me some insight. I can produce also QR codes that could come in handy, especially when we're starting to deal with new enhanced technologies such as cell phones and, QR code readers and whatnot. These kind of applications could give a lot of benefit to somebody who's doing maintenance work or needs to confirm that wire, needs to verify and say, okay, I can scan this QR code and it will read in my phone and tell me, okay, 152, 138, 134 and whatnot. And these are also generated by the system. The tool will auto-create these QR codes. So that's pretty sharp, I find. Take a look at a PLC report, and of course, if I look at a PLC document, I got the card layout, I got the information of the I/O, a color, wire, a number, and whatnot. And from this environment as well, I can access all the multitude of different information that is relevant. I can also use it as validation tools. So I can actually go here, look at this I/O. It says spare. Let me take a look at it. And I go here, go to graphic. I can go into the schematics from there. I see here spare, and I can actually change this. I can say here, Sergio is one cool dude. Yes, I do have a sense of humor. And of course, when I go back to the schematic, or to the report, I should say, that information is automatically, instantaneously taken in charge. It's a huge benefit here, of course, when you're making confirmation that the data that you've modified and changed is actually, taken in charge. Take a look at a terminal report, of course. These can also be highly detailed. When we're looking at this type of report documentation that is automatically generated by the system, we start to see where we can have customers that are actually starting to use this application for build purposes. They're using these reports to produce this specific terminal strip. They got all the information that they need. The cable, the components, the wire colors, whatever, all the information that comes out. So when you wrap your head around the idea that instead of handing a shop floor guy, a stack of schematics, which is still necessary, but I give him one schematic page that contains all the information he needs to confirm, verify, or produce, it's a lot easier for him to follow. If I take a look here at some bill of materials, here in my bill of material, very detailed information. And again, this is very highly detailed data that is being produced and outputted by whatever information is associated to my components in the case of a bill of material. One of the benefits here, of course, is, again, I mentioned about the QR codes. And this is a very interesting, hopefully for you guys, an interactive presentation that we're doing. And I'd invite you all to grab your cell phone, put it in camera mode, and scan this QR code and let me know what you see. All right, so I'll give you a few minutes to do so. The idea here, of course, is that if I produce this level of documentation and the maintenance worker or the person who's working on the panel needs additional information about this particular product, by using a cell phone and scanning that QR code, for those of you who were able to do it, I don't know if I gave you enough time to do so, or maybe your cell phones or whatever. But the idea here is that you probably will notice that by doing so, you have access to the documentation link. So the benefit here is that right off the bat, you can get information straight out of the environment. And this is automatically generated. I didn't have to additionally create a script or tell the system to magically produce this and so on and so forth. So these are inside features, out-of-the-box features, if you will. Hopefully this worked out for you. And again, I can do this for a multitude of devices. So when I'm looking at a bill of material, this could be interesting. I mentioned also the fact that I can output the power consumption of every device, especially if those devices have that information associated to it. The benefit here is that when I look at my reports, at the end of this bill of material documentation, I have here the total power consumption of all my components, and this is a calculated feature that the report functionality enables you to do. The voltage that I'm using for the enclosure is specified by the user. And of course, the feeder current will be automatically calculated. Well, what if I change that enclosure voltage? What if I go into the properties of the project and I change that and I say, you know what, I decided to use 230 volts. Well, all I have to do now is just update this report. Now, based on the calculation functionality, based on what it has as inputted information, that information will give you this calculation that will be done. Now, if this is important, something that you're manually doing today, think about being able to have a system that auto-generates that information. Similarly, again, to cable reports, highly detailed. If I look here at a plug diagram as well, getting you information of the plug, the pins that are out there. So for troubleshooting purposes, this could be interesting when you need to confirm that the connector and you're putting in your checker or your multimeter tester or whatever you will, and you're putting that in and you're getting a response from the PLC or you're getting a response from the device, you know exactly where that's going to. And at any point in time, of course, you can confirm that. You can right click here in the report, go to graphic. Oh, here we are. This is the pin. I can make modifications right here. I can edit globally, and this information will be automatically updated in accordance on the other side. Now, of course, the reporting capabilities on the technical aspects, there's a lot more that you can do. But hopefully this kind of gives you an idea. It gives you a little bit of an understanding of what, the power that you have in front of you, right? So that being said, I mean, hopefully this kind of clues you into to the concept of reporting. And what we'll do next is, with the time frame that we have left, is we'll open up the lines and or at least open up the chat. I don't know, whichever way Debbie wants to do it. And let's hear some questions here. Let's see what you guys have to say about that. If you have any comments or questions, let's hear from you guys now.
Hey, Sergio. So I have an attendee that was curious if Rockwell updated documentation breaker. Will the documentation that he gets from the QR code also get updated? Elaborate.
Well, that's right. So the information that I'm getting is basically the document file here that I'm using for the bill of material. So if I grab that specific component, which is the one that I used here, I don't know if I used this one here, but basically under the part information, this is the light, I didn't use this, but basically in the part information, I'm displaying here this document, and this document is this hyperlink number 1. Now, the way that the QR code system works inside the report, just to show you guys real quick, I know I'm being a little bit technical here, but this is something that a lot of people don't know exists and they don't really know. They might think this is all smoke and mirrors, but it isn't, believe it or not. So here in my report, in my form, all I really did is I added here this, the information which I'm searching for, which is parts external documentation 2. And EPLAN has added this show as QR code. So simple. All I have to do is tick this, and the system will auto-generate that QR code. So to answer to the question is that if Rockwell updates the information in the data portal, and you update that information in your parts database, yes, this link will actually be updated to display whatever external documentation 2 is. Hopefully that answered your question. Anything else?
We do not have any other questions at this particular time.
Right on. Okay. Hopefully you guys are, this kind of clues you in. If you guys have any feedback of maybe things, especially in this time, which is very particular for every single one of us across the globe, maybe any topics that you guys think would be interesting to see. We're really starting to be proactive here, trying to promote this for you guys, and maybe some of the things that might be of it really interesting topics for you guys to see. Let us know. It's not a bad thing. If you don't have any questions, maybe you can say, hey, Sergio, do you have a recipe for, a souffle or something like that? Hey, sure, we could talk about that too if you want. Question?
So I had an attendee ask for a recipe for custom tagging.
Custom tagging. Depending on the custom tags that you want to create, whether it be device tags or are we talking about labels?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. So obviously, whatever information is inputted on the specifics of a device. So if you're, first of all, when we're talking about device tags, these device tags follow specific regulations that we decide to choose to use, which would be NFPA or IEC or whatnot, obviously. So this system automatically takes that into consideration. But if you want to make it custom, you can customize the identifier. You can customize the counter level that you're going to be using. So these are some of the things that the system will allow you to customize so that your tag for your objects and your devices would automatically appear in a certain order. Now, bear in mind, think about the fact that you need to abide by certain regulations and specifications, which are already handled by the system by default. Now, when we're talking about labels or we're talking about outputting that information to a labeling application, that also can be customized as well. So depending if whatever information you want to read upon, whatever information you want to specify, whether it be, the label needs to contain specific information, that is something that the system allows you to create. So when you're creating a labeling scheme, you can say, okay, to that scheme, whether it be a wire labeling scheme, I wanted to produce, specific information in the format that I choose. So you have here a list of all the elements available, and you can say, I want to see the device tag of the source component or the target, and you can build that upon yourselves to create that label. So customizing is huge and key in a majority of different aspects. Hopefully that answers your question.
I have another question. Are these options available in version 2.8?
Yes, of course. I mean, these are all options. Oh, the QR code is an option that is available now as of 2.9. And this is a demonstration again also of the benefits that you get, especially when you're using the latest and the greatest applications. As an avid user of software myself, I know that as soon as a version contains a new feature that can benefit, which is, I don't know if you guys would agree with me, that QR code functionality could be huge for a lot of maintenance people. So yeah, I think it's worth it to move up or to discuss it internally and say, hey guys, this feature is great. We should move up to the latest and the greatest version, if at all possible. Keep in mind, everyone, high quality documentation, lots of time savings. The information of your project is constantly up to date, as I demonstrated. A whole bunch of different accuracy levels that we can include into it. All the different departments that can benefit from this, because whenever one department updates something, that information is also updated for the rest of the departments who might be using that documentation or maybe those reports in order to confirm and verify. And again, based on the fact that it's graphical in nature, or you can make it graphical in nature, it's a lot more it's a lot more attractive, especially when you want to shine in front of your customer. And since this is not, smoke and mirrors, as you can see, there's a lot of hard work that's been gone into making this thing look very nice and also, a good quality product. That really highlights those aspects. So any information, send it out to the link as you see there, as well as Andrew's mentioned where to get a hold of him. And hopefully we'll see you guys all in the different webcasts that we'll be producing, and hopefully you can benefit from it. So we maybe take a little break from all that Netflix that you guys are doing. All right, guys. Thank you, everyone. Debbie, Andrew, Jessica, have a good afternoon, everyone.